We're back on the record at 1:17 p.m.
Can you tell me generally how Mallinckrodt's system for detecting suspicious orders of opioids work?
Objection to form, overly broad and vague.
So there would be a customer checklist and questionnaire. There would be Dun & Bradstreet and other financial checks conducted. There would be checks of valid DEA registrations and licenses. Check to make sure that there was quota. Check to make sure that the address on the DEA registration was the same address on the 222 forms. There was a formula that was used to determine whether there was any peculiar, unusual orders. There's training for the sales and customer service reps. That's general.
Tell me about the formula you'd use and how it would apply to orders.
Objection to form, vague as its high.
So they had a formula that changed over time. They'd apply it to the orders over a 12-month period. I think later changed to an 18-month period.
Tell me, 2014, for example, what was the formula? How did it work?
So
Objection to form.
my understanding of how it worked was, I know there was a factor of 2.5 that was applied to the orders, and they would look at Oxy 30, Oxy 15 for the top distributors, Cardinal, Amerisource, McKesson, and H.D. Smith. And then they also did it for the rest of the distributors and the rest of the products.
So you said a 2.5 formula. So how did that operate in practice?
Yeah, so it wasn't something that I specifically worked on, so I don't really completely understand how that 2.5 applied. But I know that it was against orders over a 12-month period. It changed to 18-month, and I'm not sure if this is the time frame that it changed to 18 months.
So would you be comparing an order in a given month to the previous average, whether by 12 or 18 months?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know that. But it was over a period of time.
You'd be comparing an order today against your past performance.
That's my understanding.
And typically a past period of months from the date of the order that's being considered backward.
Going back in time.
Here's my question. Did Mallinckrodt do anything to determine whether or not the baseline for comparison was legitimate?
Objection to form.
I don't know what it means. What do you mean by legitimate?
Well, couldn't you have a situation where the baseline level of orders included orders that reflected illegal prescribing?
No, I don't know that.
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
Objection form, objection foundation. Objection assumes effect, not evidence.
By building into your system immediate past performance, wasn't Mallinckrodt essentially accepting that past level of opioid prescribing as a baseline number?
Objection.
So we never shipped a suspicious order? So, not sure what you're asking me.
Well, if you are trying to figure out whether an order is suspicious or not, and your system triggers a review of an order if it's significantly more than for the past 12 or 18 months. That's how your system determined whether orders were initially suspicious. Is that correct?
It's a long question. Can we hear that read back?
Let me step back. I'll just say it again. I think your testimony is the way your system would identify orders that were suspicious is the system would compare an order to the order history for a particular customer, and if it was significantly more, then it would be viewed as suspicious. Is that correct?
Objection.
No.
How did it work?
So, at that point, it was determined, also my understanding, excuse me, that the formula also looked at other customers. But at that point, it was a peculiar, and then they would conduct additional investigation to determine whether it was suspicious or not.
Well, for a peculiar order, though, the baseline that you're comparing for the 12 or 18 month period, that would be based on the historic orders from that particular customer. Is that right?
That's my understanding of how that worked.
And you know opioid use has gone up very significantly in the United States from 2010 at least up through 2014-15. Fair?
Objection.
So, I'm sorry, could you state that question again?
Sure. Opioid use rose significantly from, say, 2000 to 2015 in the United States. Fair?
Objection form, objection scope.
So, it did rise.
Did Mallinckrodt ever conduct any study to determine whether or not the baseline figures for the 12 or 18 month period that it was using to determine suspicious orders included improper orders that reflected diversion?
Objection form, foundation assumes a fact, not an evidence.
So, we shipped to the distributors, and there were no suspicious orders that were shipped.
But I'm just getting at the fact that when you would identify an order as what you call peculiar, because you're looking at the prior period of 12 or 18 months, aren't you building into the system the high volumes of prescribing established during that 12 or 18 month period for comparison?
Objection form, foundation mischaracterizes his testimony.
And again, as I stated, I don't know exactly how that formula worked.
Because if a customer's orders for a previous 12 or 18 month period, if the volume of order for that previous period included significant diversion, then the whole system would fail, right? Because it would set too high a threshold for a suspicious order.
Objection form, objection assumes a fact, not an evidence. Objection asked and answered.
No, I don't know that.
Did Mallinckrodt ever conduct a study to determine whether the order levels from its customers, such as Cardinal, McKesson, or Aerosource Bergen, reflected diversion?
Objection form, foundation.
So our system looked for peculiar, suspicious orders, and we didn't ship any.
Did Mallinckrodt ever analyze, after looking at AmerisourceBergen's shipments to Food City in Knoxville in 2013, whether or not AmerisourceBergen's orders of opioids were reflective of significant diversion of opioids?
Objection, form, foundation.
I don't know that.
Is there any time when Mallinckrodt conducted an investigation to determine whether one of its distributor customers was systematically ordering opioids at levels that reflected diversion?
Objection, form, foundation. Assumes a fact, not evidence.
No, but we didn't ship any suspicious orders.
Is it fair to say that Mallinckrodt never independently determined that a customer's 18-month history of ordering was reasonable?
Objection, form.
So that formula, I mean, was reviewed regularly, and there were changes made throughout the years.
But my question is, did anyone look at the order levels for a given customer and determine whether the order history over 12 or 18 months reflected diversion?
Objection, form, foundation, asked and answered.
So I don't know the answer to that.
Let me hand you an exhibit, Exhibit 59. Taking care of this. Here you go. Once an order was identified by your computer system as something to be looked at, what sort of review is conducted?
He's not asking about the document right now.
I'm sorry.
You want to hear the question again?
Yes, please.
Go ahead and read back the question.
Yeah.
Okay, question. Once an order was identified by your computer system as something to be looked at, what sort of review is conducted?
So my understanding, DA compliance, security at the time would get with the customer service reps who reviewed every order, and then if they needed additional information, they would reach out to the national account managers to see if they could provide the information. And then after they've gathered all the appropriate information to make a decision, then DEA compliance would make the call.
Okay, and so where would the identified order come in? Who would look at it first after the computer system had determined it needed to be looked at?
I don't know.
Well, is there a particular department that would look at it?
My recollection is that it's the customer service reps.
And customer service reps are responsible for dealing with customers of Mallinckrodt.
They have some dealings with the customers.
And what do they do with customers?
So they're the ones that are going to complete the checklists and questionnaires, verify the addresses, quota, DEA registration, and the licensing.
But the customer service reps would also be responsible for the relationship with the customer. Is that fair?
Objection.
I-
Form, foundation.
I don't know that.
Well, would they be involved in the sales process to Mallinckrodt's customers?
Objection. Form, foundation.
I'm not aware of that.
Okay. Well, they're called customer service reps. They're there to service the customers. Is that fair?
Objection. Form, foundation. Beyond
So-
the scope.
As I stated, they would handle the checklist and the questionnaires and validate additional information as I described.
Well, but the customer service reps, who would they report to in Mallinckrodt organization?
I don't know the answer to that.
They would not report, I take it, to compliance.
I don't know the answer to that.
Did any customer service reps report to you?
No.
So these do you know what the compensation for customer service reps was?
I do not.
Objection. Form.
Do you know whether they received incentive compensation based on sales of Mallinckrodt opioids?
Objection. Form. Lack of foundation. Beyond the scope.
I do not.
Now, once a customer service rep noticed that or received information that an order had been flagged for review, what would occur?
Yeah. So my understanding is that they would bring that to the attention of DEA compliance.
And then would DEA compliance approve the order?
No, then they would try to obtain additional information to see whether they can address why the order was flagged.
Incidentally, you said that Mallinckrodt never sent a suspicious order. Did you see that?
Never
Do you remember?
shipped.
Never shipped a suspicious
Mhm.
order. Do you remember the email we looked at in which your general counsel talked about certain Food City pharmacies filling prescriptions for 800,000 oxycodone pills in a year?
Objection. Form.
I recall that document.
Okay. Can you tell me why you don't think that the orders that contributed to the 800,000 prescriptions issued by Food City locations in Knoxville, Tennessee were not suspicious?
Objection. Form.
So we fill orders from the distributors, and the distributors fill orders for downstream registrants. And we didn't ship any suspicious orders. So
Well-
maybe I misunderstand what you're asking me.
What was your position at Mallinckrodt again?
My position is I'm head of global security.
Okay, and your predecessor, head of global security, had said that we need to put Food Cities, or his view was we need to put Food Cities on a chargeback restriction list. Do you remember that?
There was a reference to that, yes.
What makes you so sure that after your head of global security said that Food Cities ought to be put on a chargeback restriction list, that the orders made by distributors to supply those Food Cities were not suspicious?
Objection. Form.
So the record is unclear what additional work they did not to restrict for Food City.
It sounds like your view is if an order was shipped, then ipso facto it must not be suspicious.
Objection. Form. Objection mischaracterizes his testimony.
No, that's not what I said. So we didn't ship any suspicious orders.
Well, let's get back to your order process. Let's look at Exhibit 59. Do you see that this is an email from Brenda Recop to Jim Roush?
Yes.
And she says, Jim, can we have the PS hold removed from our order flow? This is the hold system that puts on, this is the hold, let me restate that. She says, Jim, can we have the PS hold removed from our order flow? This is the hold the system puts on, quote, suspicious, close quote, orders. Do you see that she says that?
Yes.
Who is Jim Roush, do you know?
I I believe him to be in customer service rep.
Who was Brenda Recop?
Again, I don't know her, but it says underneath her name here on this email that she's a customer service rep.
And is PS holds a phrase that you're familiar with?
It is not.
Okay. Do you see that she wants to remove the PS hold from her order flow system?
Yeah, that's what that says.
And then she says, we do not do anything with these orders except have to remember to release them. Do you see that?
I see that.
So fair to say, in 2011, when an order was put on hold for being suspicious, there wasn't an investigation. Mallinckrodt simply released them.
Objection form, foundation assumes a fact, not an evidence.
No, I don't know what she's referring to here, but our process is that we would review the order and try to determine whether there was anything suspicious about it or not.
And the point is, you were not at Mallinckrodt in May 2011 when Brenda Rehak sent this email to Jim Roush, fair?
I was not there.
Okay, so really you're not in a position to say whether or not her characterization of the suspicious order review process is accurate or not for this
Objection.
period. Fair?
Objection.
No, so I don't know what she's referring to in here, but I am aware of the process that was in place back then.
What we have here is one customer service representative's assessment of how the process worked. Fair?
Objection. Lack
No.
of foundation. Beyond the scope.
I'm sorry. My answer is no.
Well, but you said that the customer service representative is the person that gets that order once it's been tagged as suspicious, right?
That's part of the process, correct.
So she would have been the person who was receiving these suspicious order holds, fair?
She would have been a person who was receiving it. Jim was a person, I think he was the supervisor. He was reviewing it. And then the process continues on that he would send it to compliance. If a determination was made, they would release the order. If a determination couldn't be made, then they would look for additional information. And if they got the information that would give them comfort level to lift the hold, they would do that. If not, then it could be deemed suspicious and it wouldn't be shipped.
And what she says is, well, we just don't do anything except we just wait to release them. That's her assessment, at least of the orders she's dealing with at this time.
Objection. Form, foundation, beyond the scope.
Again, I think I've stated this prior. I don't know what she's referring to in that line. I'm just telling you what our process was.
Let me hand you another exhibit. Okay, do you see this as an email from Karen Harper to Jim Roush dated 6/9/2010?
Yes.
So Jim Roush is the person who received the previous email that we discussed that was Exhibit 59?
Yes.
Okay, and Jim Roush, do you see in the middle of this document, it's Exhibit 60, Jim Roush sends Karen Harper an email dated June 9th, 2010?
Yes.
Do you see that he says, I have not had any orders in the classification of peculiar that has not been cleared and explainable thus far. As we have discussed, it takes time to get the information back from marketing and sales, sometimes all day. Since I don't hold the orders up during my due diligence, it's possible that the order could ship. I thought we discussed this in alerting the DEA about a suspicious order / customer for further investigation would be our process going forward. Do you see that?
I do.
So what he's saying there is, at least at this time, 2010, his practice was to release the orders immediately without waiting for any investigation. Is that right?
Objection, mischaracterizes the document. Objection, lack of foundation.
Yeah, so I don't think that what it says here, but he does say that he releases it.
And you see that Karen Harper says, Jim, we absolutely did have the discussion previously, and there is no disagreement now. Do you see that?
Yes. I merely wanted to, that there is no disagreement now. Okay?
And she says, I merely wanted to confirm that we have not shipped any suspicious orders, even if we do the investigation after the shipment.
That's right.
Okay. But I mean, she's just confirming what he said to her, which is that they don't wait, they just immediately send out the order without any investigation. And then any investigation occurs after the fact. Fair?
Objection, form, foundation, mischaracterizes the document.
Yeah. So that's not how I read what Jim is saying. And they've shipped the order. Even if they haven't completed their review, the regulations call for us to identify it when we've identified it as suspicious. So even if we shipped it, if it was sometime down the line that we determined it was suspicious, then we would notify the DEA. So Karen again says we've not shipped any suspicious orders.
Let me hand you the next document. I mean, at the time you weren't supposed to ship an order that was suspicious, right? You were supposed to investigate first before it was shipped. Fair?
Objection, lack of foundation, cause for a legal conclusion.
Right.
Same objections.
I'm sorry, could you state the question?
Sure. At the time that Karen Harper emailed Jim Roush in June 2010, the requirement was that you hold an order if it was suspicious. Fair?
No. You could hold, report, ship, and investigate. Back at the time, the DEA would make, my understanding from the DEA was that they left it up to the companies to do, but that you needed to notify per the regulations when you identified the order as suspicious. So I believe it was later in time that the DEA clarified that by giving a little bit more guidance to the industry to make sure that they weren't shipping orders that could be suspicious. So, at that point, we held, reported, investigated, and shipped.
So you think that in 2010, the DEA said it was okay to ship an order even after it had been identified as suspicious?
No, that's not what I said.
Okay.
So, in this case, what we're talking about is us flagging those peculiar orders. So this is a peculiar order. So if it gets shipped, it hasn't been identified as suspicious at that point. And that's what I've stated. So if we identify later through our ongoing review that it is suspicious, at that point we would have to notify DEA that we have a suspicious order. And since we're sending to the distributors, we have an opportunity to go and take that order back.
Okay, but the point is you felt that in 2010, the fact that an order had been triggered by your system as what you call peculiar, that did not preclude Mallinckrodt shipping the order even before any investigation was concluded.
Okay, that's your conclusion about no investigation being concluded. That's not what this says.
Go ahead.
So my interpretation of this is that it was ongoing, they released the order, and then Karen follows up and says that there's no disagreement now, and we've never shipped a suspicious order. So even though they released some of these peculiar orders back in June 2010, none of them turned out to be suspicious.
But
when their
Go ahead.
review continued.
And I just want to make sure I understand. I understand your testimony about what they did. Is it your testimony that in 2010, Mallinckrodt's understanding was that it was not required to hold an order until the investigation was completed?
Objection, form, objection.
So, as I stated, the DEA didn't come down and say which way to do it. All they said was, per the regulations, you can't ship the suspicious order.
And what I'm getting at is you interpreted that at Mallinckrodt, at least as of 2010, to let you ship orders after they'd been triggered by your system as what you call peculiar, even before a determination or an investigation had been conducted. Fair?
Objection, form, objection mischaracterizes his testimony. Objection asked and answered.
I'm sorry, I forget what you're asking me now.
I can imagine there's quite a few objections. Let me step back and ask it again.
Okay.
It sounds like you are saying that Mallinckrodt's belief was in 2010 that even after an order was identified as what you call peculiar, it could ship the order before an investigation was conducted.
Objection mischaracterizes his testimony.
Yeah, so it was shipped before it was completed.
And you thought that was lawful?
Objection calls for a legal conclusion.
According to the regulations, it was permissible.
Here's Exhibit 61. Do you see that this is an email from Eileen Spalding to Carrie Johnson?
Yes.
And do you know who Eileen Spalding was?
She's part of the DEA compliance team.
Okay. How about Carrie Johnson?
I believe her to be part of the DEA compliance team also.
Okay. And then below, do you see another email from Eileen Spalding to Karen Harper, Jennifer Buist, and Gail Tetzlaff?
Yes.
It says, subject is forward, U2 holds.
Yes.
Okay, U2 hold is a suspicious monitoring hold.
Objection, form.
Again, I'm not familiar with this this term.
Okay. Do you see that Eileen Spalding says, Brenda Rickhop contacted me concerning the UT holds, although responsibility has transitioned to customer service to run the DC U2 hold reports. The DC keeps contacting customer service to advise us to review and release the orders. The DC continues to monitor the orders on hold and wants them released immediately once they go on hold. As you know, the multiple forced reports becomes burdensome for us as it does for customer service. In some cases, DC is requesting orders to be reviewed, released. They will not ship until the next day or even later. Do you see that?
Objection, form.
So
Misread the document.
yeah. So in that line it says, as you know, the multiple forced reports becomes cumbersome for us.
Well, I'll tell you what, so we don't mess this up, why don't you read that, I should have just had you do this, read the paragraph starting with Brenda Recop into the record.
Brenda Recop contacted me concerning the U2 holds. Although responsibility has transitioned to customer service to run the DC U2 hold reports, the DC keeps contacting customer service to advise us to review and release the orders. The DC continues to monitor the orders on hold and wants them released immediately once the go on hold. As you know, the multiple forced reports becomes cumbersome for us as it does for customer service. In some cases, DC is requesting orders be reviewed / released that will not ship until the next day or even later.
So what is DC? Do you know what DC she's referring to?
I believe that to be the distribution center.
Okay, and she's saying that sometimes the process of reviewing orders might delay the order a single day. Is that her conclusion?
Objection. Mischaracterizes the document.
I don't. I don't know that it says that.
Well, she says the DC is requesting orders to be reviewed, released that will not ship until the next day or even later. Do you see that?
DC is requesting orders to be reviewed, released that will not ship until the next day or even later.
That's right.
Okay.
So what Eileen Spalding is saying is, gosh, this suspicious order system is holding up our orders. Is that right?
Objection form foundation mischaracterizes the document.
No, that's not how I understand this.
Okay. Well, isn't she saying that the suspicious order monitoring process is cumbersome for Mallinckrodt?
Objection mischaracterizes the document. Lack of foundation.
So
Beyond the scope.
So she says that, as you know, the multiple force reports become cumbersome for us.
She's referring to the system whereby Mallinckrodt would identify suspicious orders.
Again, I don't know what a U2 hold. I'm not familiar with that term, so I'm not sure.
Okay. So you're not sure whether or not they're talking about holds under the suspicious order monitoring system?
I'm not familiar with U2, and that's correct. So therefore, I don't know what they're talking about.
But do you think, given that you've got Eileen Spalding emailing Karen Harper and you're dealing with Brenda Recop, who in previous emails is talking about these holds, can we conclude to here we're talking about the holds placed on orders because of the suspicious order monitoring system?
Now, I'm not comfortable with that because I don't know what a U2 hold even means.
Let me give you the next document. Do you have in front of you Mallinckrodt document number 62? Just the document. Do you see you have Exhibit 62 in front of you, sir?
I do.
Okay, and do you see it's an email from Scott Parker to Jennifer Buist?
Yes.
Okay, they're Mallinckrodt employees.
Again, I don't know Scott Parker, but he's got a Covidian email address.
So-
And Jen Buist was an employee.
Of Mallinckrodt.
Yes.
Okay, so Scott says, Jennifer, I'll call you going forward. Putting one of our branded customers' order on a U2 hold should be discussed prior to the event. In most cases, I'll be able to provide additional information. Do you see that?
I do.
Do you see this follows her email saying, Scott, as this is a new item, we're trying to understand what anticipated order quantities may be. Because it is a new item, it trips our algorithm and goes on a U2 hold. We're trying to better understand what estimated order quantities may be moving forward. Do you see that?
I do.
And she's responding to his email where he said, Jennifer, there has to be a mistake on the 32 milligram. We just launched this SKU. How could it be on hold less than 4 weeks on the market?
Yes, I see that.
And what's going on here is this Exalgo that's been placed on hold?
Objection form.
Does it say that here, and I'm missing it, or?
Do you see that at the bottom of the page with base number 6418,
Yes.
it says Exalgo 32 milligram tablets?
Exalgo 32 and roxicodone 15 milligrams.
Yes,
Okay.
and then
Oh, okay.
Scott says there's got to be a mistake on the 32 milligrams. We just launched this SKU. How could it be on hold less than 4 weeks on the market? Do you see that?
I do.
And so what he directs her to do is going forward to call him before she puts any Exalgo on hold. Do you see that?
Objection form, objection scope.
Okay, I've read it now. What's your question?
Scott Parker's directing her to call him before she puts an order of a branded Mallinckrodt product goes on hold, right?
Objection form mischaracterizes the document.
Yes.
Scope.
So my understanding is he doesn't have the authority to tell her because the system is going to flag it. And at that point, a further review would take place.
But that is what he's asking her, whether or not it can be accomplished. Fair?
Objection vague form.
I mean, the email is what it is. It says, putting one of our branded, in quotes, customer's order on a U2 hold should be discussed prior to the event.
Fair to say that there's a lot of pressure from the sales team to prevent orders from being held up. Is that right?
Objection form, objection scope.
No.
How long was the average review of an order identified as suspicious, or as you call it, peculiar within the Mallinckrodt system?
Objection form, objection foundation, objection scope.
So my understanding was, within a day or so.
Do you know it down to did Mallinckrodt ever calculate down to the minute how many minutes elapsed between the time an order was identified as peculiar and the time it shipped?
I don't know
Objection
that.
form,
Was there a
foundation.
Go ahead.
My answer is I don't know that.
Was there a record maintained within Mallinckrodt of every order that was identified as peculiar or suspicious?
Can I hear that right back?
Sure. Question, was there a record maintained within Mallinckrodt of every order that was identified as suspicious?
Or peculiar, did he say?
Let me check that. Yes, I had a typo there.
Okay.
Yeah. That's,
Thank you. I'm sorry, thank you. Yes.
And today, could I go back and identify with Mallinckrodt documents every order that Mallinckrodt received in the year 2014 that was tagged by its system as peculiar or suspicious?
Objection form and foundation.
That's my understanding.
And could I determine the length of time that elapsed for each order between the time it was identified as peculiar or suspicious and the time it was shipped?
Objection form and foundation.
I have no idea.
Tell me everything that, once an order was indicated as suspicious, it was up to the sales representative to decide how it should be investigated. Is that right?
Objection form, foundation mischaracterizes his testimony.
No.
Who would make that determination?
The final determination will be made by the DEA compliance team.
Okay, who led that team?
Karen Harper.
And is there a record showing how long the DEA compliance team took to evaluate and clear suspicious orders in, say, 2014?
I don't know the answer to that.
Fair to say you don't know the average amount of time it took for Mallinckrodt's DEA compliance team to declare orders clear to ship
Objection.
once they were identified as suspicious or peculiar?
Objection form, foundation, scope.
I do not.
What considerations did the DEA compliance team give or take into account when they were deciding whether a peculiar or suspicious order should be cleared for shipment?
Can you state that question?
Sure.
one more time?
Were there standardized questions that the DEA compliance team asked with respect to suspicious orders to determine whether or not they could be shipped?
So my understanding is that they would review those orders and try to determine why they got flagged in the system.
Well, were there certain items of information that the DEA compliance team, as a matter of routine, considered when reviewing each suspicious order?
Form. Objection form.
I don't know that.
Do you know if there was a written document that set out the process whereby Mallinckrodt employees would review suspicious or peculiar orders and determine whether or not they could be shipped?
Can I hear that right back, please?
Question, do you know if there was a written document that sets out the process whereby Mallinckrodt employees would pursue suspicious or peculiar orders and determine whether or not they could be shipped?
Don't mark them yet.
I can't recall if there was a procedure on that.
Do you, let's turn, I'm going to hand you Exhibit 63. Do you see that Exhibit 63 is an email from Shelley Palmer to Jennifer Buist and others, in which she says, "Good afternoon. Please see the attached report as there are several clinic orders on a U2 hold. We need them released ASAP if they are to ship today. Why are we experiencing this all of a sudden? Is there a way to prevent this?" Do you see this?
I see that.
And Shelley Palmer's logistics planner.
That's the title underneath her name.
Now that exhibit is dated April the 3rd, 2013, fair?
Correct.
And let me hand you the next exhibit. Do you see that the next exhibit is Exhibit 64?
Yes.
And do you see this as an exhibit from the next day, April 2013?
April 4th, 2013, yes.
Yeah, and do you see that Shelley Palmer again is sending Jennifer Buist and others an email, and she says, "The attached report has another order on U2 hold. Please release as soon as possible as this needs to ship today." Do you see that?
Objection form, objection scope.
Yes.
And I take it we could look at Mallinckrodt's records and determine whether or not those orders shipped.
Objection form, foundation, scope.
That's my understanding.
Now, let me hand you Exhibit 65. And do you see Exhibit 65 as a series of emails?
Yes.
Okay, and turn to the second page of Exhibit 65
Can I have 1
with,
second?
yeah. Just wait. Is that on?
Thank you.
So if you turn to the second page of Exhibit 65, marked Bates number that ends in 9625, do you see an email to Peter Romer from Jennifer Buist? Starts on the previous page, dated April 22nd, 2013.
Yes.
She says, "Pete, we have ANDA order 7027 2848 for morphine sulfate ER 15 milligram tabs on U2 hold. Their quantity ordered exceeds any total quantity for any customer in their segment for the last 18 months. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, she says this order was placed on U2 hold.
Yes.
So do you now recognize that U2 hold is this expression used for holding an order because it's been identified as peculiar or suspicious?
Objection form.
I still don't know what it means, but I read what's here.
Can you see that she suggests for Peter to send to a customer some language, and it's at the bottom of the page?
Yes.
Okay. And do you see that the language she suggests says that Mallinckrodt is required by the DEA to monitor orders of controlled substances, and that Mallinckrodt's anti-diversion program has identified an order for additional review?
Objection.
Yes.
So, is it now clear that U2 hold is a hold based on Mallinckrodt's anti-diversion program?
So again, I'm still unfamiliar with the term U2 hold, but I see what Jen is saying here.
Okay. And does that clarify for you that the U2 hold terminology reflects a hold on an order of opioids based on Mallinckrodt's anti-diversion activities?
So I'm unfamiliar with that term and what it all entails, but I see what Jen has put in here that says it's part of our anti-diversion program.
Okay. And do you see that Ryan Donahue states to Jennifer Buist on April the 22nd, 2013, I spoke with Pete today about the current U2 hold on ANDA for their 24-bottle order on morphine ER 15 milligrams, SKU 831501. Market disruptions have occurred across the morphine ER family in the market, and we are not concerned with the ANDA order below of 24 bottles. Please release, as customers are having to go many places to fulfill their needs. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. And then Jennifer Buist writes back, she writes back, well, let's look at this. Step back for a moment. Do you see that Ryan Donahue sends this email to Jennifer Buist on April 22nd, 2013 at 10:30 a.m.?
Yes.
And 6 minutes later, Jennifer Buist at 10:36 a.m. emails him back to say, if the market is experiencing disruptions, this is the information we require. I will recommend release.
Yes, I see where she says that.
So the point is here, the process of reviewing this suspicious order took about 6 minutes.
Objection mischaracterizes the document. Objection. Scope.
So, I mean, if we look back at Jen's previous email started at 9:34. So when we get to this email from Jen, we're a little over an hour.
Okay, so your point is, gosh, we gave this this suspicious order for opioids an hour of our consideration, so that's acceptable review of suspicious orders?
Objection form.
So, not involved in this transaction, but I will tell you that the individuals who were involved in the transaction were comfortable making the decision to release the order.
Do you see anything in this exhibit that indicates anything that, any information Mallinckrodt considered other than the vague passive voice declaration that market disruptions have occurred?
Objection form, objection scope.
So the record's unclear whether there's any other information that they considered.
I hand you the next document. And you see it's Mallinckrodt Exhibit 66. You see here Shelley Palmer emails Jennifer Buis, says, can you please ship this order as soon as possible for it to ship today?
Objection scope.
So she says, can you please release this order as soon as possible for it to ship today?
You see
I
that?
see that, yes.
And this is another one of these emails that Shelley Palmer is sending to Jennifer Buis and others involving suspicious orders.
Objection form, objection scope.
It's referencing the U2 hold.
And then can you turn, let me hand you the next document. You see the next document is a July 9th, 2013 email. And Shelley Palmer is emailing Jennifer Buis and others again saying, above are 2 clinic orders that are showing on U2 hold. Can you please release as soon as possible and let me know once complete? These orders need to ship today. Do you see that?
Objection scope.
I see that verbiage, yes.
And then, without further discussion, on the same day, Jennifer Buis emails back and says, the orders have been released.
Objection form, foundation, scope.
So the record's unclear whether there were any other discussions or what review took place.
The record on Exhibit 67, though, doesn't show any information passed from Shelley Palmer to Jennifer Buis that would justify releasing this order. Fair?
Objection form, foundation, scope.
As I stated, the record's unclear what additional information Jen or others were able to get. All this shows is that there was a request to release, and 5+ hours later, there's a notification that the orders have been released.
Let me hand you another document, Exhibit 68. Do you see here again on July 24th, 2013, Shelley Palmer?
Hold on, Counselor, because I don't have a
Oh,
copy.
pardon me, go ahead. Do you have in front of you the exhibit?
68?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you see again, here's another correspondence from Shelley Palmer dated July 24th, 2013. Do you see that?
July 24th, 2013, yes.
And here again, she's emailing Jennifer Buis and others within Mallinckrodt, and she says, good afternoon, the attachment contains several clinic orders on a U2 hold. Can you please release as soon as possible and let me know when complete?
Objection scope.
Yes, that's what it says.
So this is another one of these ASAP letters that Jennifer Palmer, or pardon me, strike that. This is another one of these ASAP letters that Shelley Palmer is sending Jennifer Buis demanding that these orders tagged as suspicious or problematic be released. Fair?
Objection form, foundation, and scope.
Yep. So again, your characterization of this is not what the language in here is. It says the attachment contains several clinic order on a U2 hold. Can you please release as soon as possible and let me know when complete?
Let me hand you the next exhibit. Do you see this is an email dated July 25th, 2016 from Heather McKenzie to Elva Ramsaran?
Exhibit 69, yes.
Yes, you see the subject is McKesson order released from U1 SOM hold oxycodone 15 milligram revised forecast, question mark. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, SOM hold, is that a term you're familiar with?
SOM hold, not U1.
An SOM hold is suspicious order monitoring hold?
That's how I interpret it.
Okay. Do you see that Heather McKenzie says, with respect to the orders listed here, this order has been released from U1 hold. However, we require documentation for the SOM files. Do you see that?
Yes.
So what Heather McKenzie's saying is, we'll release this order to ship even though we don't have the documentation showing that it's a legitimate order?
Objection form, objection mischaracterizes the document, objection lack of foundation.
So that's not what it says.
Okay.
It says this order has been released from U1 hold. Again, I don't know what a U1 hold is. However, we require documentation for the SOM files. So this document is unclear as to what conversations took place, what review, what information they had to make the decision to release the hold, but it appears whatever was discussed, they're requiring that information be forwarded to put in the files.
It was released without the documentation that was required for the SOM file. Fair?
No,
Object-
I'm sorry.
Objection, go ahead.
I don't think that's... Are you sure? I mean, she says the order has been released from U1 hold. However, we require documentation for the SOM files. Doesn't that clearly show that the order was released before the documentation had been provided?
Objection form, objection assumes a fact, not evidence.
So that wasn't your previous question, but the record is also unclear what was discussed. All we can see here is the order has been released and she's asking for the documentation for the SOM files. So it appears, based on our process, they got the information they required to release the order. And whatever that part of the discussion is, she's asking for the documentation. The documentation was not required to release the order, but it is required for her file.
Do you see it says in the subject line, McKesson order released from U1 SOM hold?
Yes.
Doesn't that clear up this ambiguity you've been referring to and demonstrate that the U1 hold is just an SOM hold?
Objection form, foundation.
Again, as stated before, I didn't know what a U2 hold was. I don't know what a U1 hold is. I'm familiar with the SOM hold. But what the U1 or U2, I have no idea what that refers to.
And this document from 2016, which refers to a U1 SOM hold, doesn't clarify that for you?
Objection form, foundation, asked and answered.
No, because I don't know what a U1 is.
Let me hand you Mallinckrodt.
Actually, before you do that, can we
70.
take a short break?
Sure.
Thanks.
You're going off the record at 2:21 p.m. We are back on the record at 2:41 p.m.
Let me hand you Exhibit 70. And it is, do you have in front of you an email from Jennifer Buis to Stephen Becker dated 12/16/2013?
Yes.
And she says, Steve, we had a Dakota drug order on U2 hold for oxycodone HCl 5 milligram tabs USP. We released the order. However, please provide an updated forecast for this customer SKU, as the MTD volume for December equates to 29% of their year-to-date orders. See attached for data and chart. Do you see that?
I do.
So do you see what happened here is they released the order, and now she's trying to get the information that explains the release. Fair?
Objection form, objection foundation, mischaracterizes the document.
No,
You can answer.
that's not how I interpret it.
Okay, how do you interpret it?
That she's asking for an updated forecast for this customer.
And the reason is because the order volume equates to 29% of their year-to-date volume. Is that right?
That's what this document says.
So really, she's saying we need to update this forecast so that these orders don't trigger our suspicious order monitoring system.
Objection form, foundation, mischaracterizes the document.
No, that's not how I interpret it.
Let me hand you Exhibit 71. And do you have in front of you an email from Sharon Banks to Jennifer Buist and others dated April 15th, 2014?
Yes.
And do you see that Sharon Banks asks for an order to be reviewed?
I'm sorry, you're on a different page, or?
Right, I'm looking at the first page, which is, let's go back all the way to the second page that's marked Mallinckrodt-TNST A02529989. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, and do you see that Sharon Banks on April 15th, 2014 at 10:47 a.m. asks Jennifer and Eileen, can you please review the following orders and release from U2 hold? Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, and then at 11:05, less than 10 minutes later, Jennifer Buist states orders have been released from U2 hold except for McKesson, which is still under investigation. Do you see that?
Objection form, foundation, mischaracterizes the document.
So the email from Jen to Sharon and Eileen?
Yes.
Yes. Says orders have been released from U2 hold except for McKesson, which is still under investigation. That's what it says, yes.
Okay, and that release just took a few minutes. Fair?
Objection, mischaracterizes the document, form, foundation.
So from the time that Sharon sends the email to Jen, but I don't know how long, because the record's unclear, how long this has been on hold and what review was taking place for them to be able to say that. But it's clear that the review continues for at least the McKesson part of this.
Well, and then flip over to the next page, which is marked the Bates number that ends in 998. Do you see that there's an email from Sharon Banks to Jennifer Buist asking them to review another held order?
Yes.
Okay, the email goes out to Jennifer Buist at 11:25 a.m.
Yes.
11:53, she emails back, says order's been released.
Okay.
Let's turn to the next Exhibit 72. And do you see here, this is an email from Gail Tetzlaff to Eileen Spalding dated September 10th, 2014.
Gail to Eileen, yes.
And she says, Eileen, FYI, I have reviewed and released all the orders on this report, but did not do the Excel file related stuff. Thanks. Do you see that?
I do.
And then let me hand you Exhibit 73. I need one. Oh. Do you see that Exhibit 73 turn to the second page of the document marked with the base number that ends in 774. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, and then do you see that on May 26th at 8:45 a.m., Lisa Cardetti asked Jennifer Buist, "Hi Jen, please see below. We have given several price decreases for the OptiSource group, so I would expect to continue to see an increase for these members." Do you see that?
I see that. Just to clear the record up, I believe you said 8:45 and it's 8:54. So I just want to make sure the record's clear.
So the email from Lisa Cardetti is at 8:54 a.m.
That's correct.
on May 26, 2015?
Yes.
And then do you see Jennifer Buist says, "Lisa, is it possible to obtain an updated forecast at a minimum for the oxycodone 15 milligram and 30 milligram SKUs? See attached for the original 2015 oxy forecast?"
Yes.
Okay, and do you see that on the next page that ends in 773, that's the Bates number?
Yes.
Lisa Cardetti tells Jennifer Buist, "Yes, I'll ask them for one. Please release this order in the meantime, though." You see that?
Yes.
And so Jennifer Buist emails back, in less than an hour and says, "Gail, I recommend release. We'll continue to monitor usage based on the current forecast." Do you see that?
Yes.
So she asks for the forecast. Lisa says, "Oh yeah, I'll get you a forecast, but meanwhile, release this order." And Jennifer Buist releases it without the forecast. Fair?
Objection. Mischaracterizes the document. Objection. Foundation.
And what Jen says
Objection,
is,
scope.
I'm sorry. What Jen says is they'll continue to use the current forecast.
Now let's look at Exhibit 74. Exhibit 74 has an email from Karen Harper to Elva Ramsaran. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, and then it's responding to Elva Ramsaran, who sends Karen Harper and Carrie Johnson an email on Thursday, March 24th, 2016. Do you see that?
Yes.
And what she says is, here's McKesson's response, and there are a series of orders, and then there are explanations for a series of hold orders. Do you see that?
Underneath where it says, "Here is McKesson's response."
That's right.
Yes.
And the responses are spike in the last couple of weeks, spike in the last couple of weeks, spike in the last couple of weeks, and looks consistent. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. So what McKesson's saying is the reason our order is up to suspicious levels is because the order is up. There's been a spike.
Objection. Form. Objection. Mischaracterizes the document.
Is that what they say?
Objection. Same objections.
So the way you characterize it, I don't know that's what they're saying. What is listed on this document is spike, looks consistent, and spike. But I don't know what that means.
Well, I mean, your order system identifies an order as peculiar or suspicious because it exceeds an average for a prior period. Fair?
Objection. Lack of foundation. Objection. Mischaracterizes the witness's prior testimony. Objection. Form.
So I don't know that that's what that says.
I mean, it's really not an additional piece of information that the order reflects a spike. That's why the order was indicated as peculiar in the first place. Fair?
Hold on. Can I have that right back, please? Sure.
Question. I mean, it's really not an additional piece of information that the order reflects a spike. That's why the order was indicated as peculiar in the first place. Fair?
Objection. Form.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question? I want to make sure that
McKesson's order system, strike that. Mallinckrodt's system is triggered when an order, among other things, Mallinckrodt's system is triggered when an order is significantly higher than for a similar orders for a period prior to the order in question. Fair?
That's my understanding.
So every order that is triggered as peculiar reflects a spike, right?
Objection.
I don't know that it's characterized that way as a spike.
Well, put it this way, the orders are released. These orders that are described as a spike are then released from U2 hold based upon average monthly utilization. Fair?
So the orders are released. What the record's unclear is what other information they used to release those orders.
And the reason you say this is because essentially McKesson has provided no meaningful information prior to the release, right?
Objection form, objection foundation.
So the record is unclear what other information they utilized to make their decision to release the order.
Has Mallinckrodt ever reported a suspicious order to the state of Tennessee?
So I think as I've testified before, I'm unaware of any distributors that we ship to in Tennessee. And our product goes to the distributors. So I believe that the regulation calls for then the distributor to report any suspicious orders they may become aware of when they ship into Tennessee.
Is the answer no, that no suspicious order has ever been reported to the state of Tennessee by Mallinckrodt?
Objection asked and answered.
No,
What's the
because
answer?
I'm unaware of any suspicious orders going into Tennessee.
And how many orders total has Mallinckrodt stopped shipment on because of its suspicious order monitoring obligations?
Objection.
I don't know the total number.
Well, can you tell me since 2012, how many orders total since 2012 has Mallinckrodt stopped shipment on because of its suspicious order monitoring obligations?
Objection.
I cannot.
Let me hand you Exhibit 70. 75, pardon me. Criminal question. Do you see Exhibit 75?
I do.
What are the excluded items referred to on Exhibit 75?
Okay, so I'm unfamiliar with this document, so I need to read it. Okay, so I'm sorry, your question now is?
Sure. Do you see it says excluded items within the UOR scope of JDE?
Yes.
And it says below, a select number of SKUs are exempt from running through the UOR algorithm. A listing of the excluded SKUs is provided below along with the reasoning.
Yes, I see that.
Okay. And is this document listing items that are excluded from the computerized evaluation of orders within Mallinckrodt's suspicious order monitoring system?
Objection form, objection lack of foundations.
I don't know because I'm unfamiliar with UOR.
Okay.
I'm
Are
sorry,
there
I'm
certain
not sure what that
items,
means.
certain drugs that are not evaluated by Mallinckrodt's computer system that evaluates orders to determine whether they are suspicious?
Objection form, overly broad, vague.
I don't know the answer to that.
So you don't know whether generic Exalgo is evaluated for suspicious order. Strike that. You don't know whether Mallinckrodt's system, whereby its computer evaluates orders to determine whether or not they're peculiar or suspicious evaluates generic exalgo orders?
Objection, form, foundation, scope.
I don't know.
Is it your understanding that every single drug, opioid drug produced by Mallinckrodt is evaluated by the computer system you've described, whereby orders are evaluated for their size to determine whether or not they are peculiar or suspicious?
Objection, form.
So I don't know whether every product is included or not.
Do you know whether the term peculiar referring to an order is a unique Mallinckrodt term?
I do not know.
Okay, the term peculiar doesn't have any meaning within DEA regulations that you know of, fair?
Objection, scope.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the term in the DEA regulations.
I mean, a suspicious order, that's a concept that the DEA uses when describing certain types of orders. Is that fair?
Objection, scope.
Yes, it's in the regulations.
Whereas the terminology peculiar, as far as you know, is not in the regulations.
Objection, scope.
That's my understanding.
I'm going to hand you Exhibit 76. And do you see that Exhibit 76 has on the front a blank sheet which has a Bates number MNK-TN-STA00564007? See that?
I'm sorry. What am I looking at here again?
Sure. At the very top, there's something called a Bates number.
Oh, up at the top.
Okay. Do you see
I've
that?
always been at the bottom, and I'm looking at the bottom. I'm sorry. Could you say that again then?
Sure. Is that document, is the Bates number on the document Bates number MNK-TNSTA00564007?
I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. And could you turn it over and look at the chart that you've got there, or the map?
Yes.
Okay, and is that document what you referred to earlier in the testimony as a heat map?
That's what it appears to be. Yes.
Okay, and it shows prescriptions of IR 30 milligram tablets per capita?
Objection, scope.
Oxycodone IR 30 milligram tablets per capita.
And do you see that the dating on it is January to June 2013?
Yes.
So you can look at it and see per capita how many oxycodone IR 30 milligram tablets are being prescribed?
Objection, scope.
So I can see the tablets per capita.
And so you can look and see that there are certain areas in blue that have a low number of prescriptions, and then there are a series of elevations of color that show higher levels of prescriptions?
Objection, scope.
Oxycodone IR 30 milligram tablets.
And I mean, the point is, if you look at the red, those are the areas where you have the highest level of oxycodone IR 30 milligram tablets prescribed?
Objection, scope.
Oxycodone IR 30 milligram tablets per capita.
That's what the red shows. That's the highest levels on this map.
Objection,
Yeah, it's
scope.
like a dark orange. Is that
Sure.
what you're
Yeah,
considering red?
that's right.
Yes.
You see
okay.
that?
Yes.
Do you see that the part of northeast Tennessee is entirely covered in the red?
Objection, scope.
As long as the dark orange for me is the red for you.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Yes.
It's covered in the darkest, in the color that on the map indicates 2.9 to 14.7 prescriptions per capita.
Yes.
Objection,
Okay.
scope.
That's the highest level on the map.
Objection, scope.
So the oxycodone IR 30 milligram tablets per capita, that dark orange, in my view, is the highest listed here.
And the entire portion of Northeast Tennessee here, that is in this dark orange, the color that indicates the highest level of prescriptions of oxycodone IR 30 milligram
I'm
tablets.
sorry, I didn't know you were pointing to it up there.
Okay, do you see it?
Scope.
Yeah, I can see what you're pointing to.
Okay, and my conclusion is accurate. That's what the map says. It shows that you've got this dark orange indicating the highest level of prescribing. Fair?
Objection. Scope.
Again, oxycodone IR 30 milligram tablets per capita.
Okay, that's what the dark orange indicates.
Objection. Scope.
That's the highest level?
According to
objection.
this IMS data, yes.
Okay, and then that color representing the highest level covers the northeastern portion of Tennessee, correct?
Objection. Scope.
Where you're pointing on to the map, yes.
Did Mallinckrodt generate heat maps for subsequent years, 2014, 15, 16, 17?
This objection. This is dated 11/23/15.
Thank you. So this map is dated 11/23/15. Is that fair?
That's when it says it's yes.
And I guess the data it says is source IMS exponent plan track January to June 2013. Do you see that?
Yes.
So maybe a better question is, were other heat maps generated by Mallinckrodt periodically reflecting data that was collected for periods in 2014 and 15?
Objection. Scope.
So I know there were other heat maps that were created from the IMS data. As I testified earlier, there was a lag in the data, and as I sit here, I don't have the recollection of when they were created.
Well, let me ask you this. During the period when Mallinckrodt purchased IMS data showing prescriptions of opioids in the United States, could it generate heat maps of the sort that we're looking at right here?
Objection. Scope. Objection. Form.
So we did create heat maps from the IMS data.
And point is, for the period that you acquired the IMS data, you could create the heat maps. Fair?
Objection. Form. Objection. Scope.
We could.
I'm going to hand you Exhibit 77. Okay, do you see this as...
Hold on, Counsel.
Yep, sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, do you see that it's an email from Jennifer Buis to Gail Tetzlaff and John Gillies, you, forwarding what she says is RX data?
Yes.
Okay, RX data is prescription data.
Objection. Lack of foundation. Objection. Scope.
Is that what RX data means, is prescription data?
That's my understanding.
Okay, now turn to the forwarded document. Do you see you have a series of PowerPoint slides, the first of which states state ranking hydrocodone January to September 2013.
State ranking hydrocodone January to September 2013, yes.
And do you see that Tennessee's ranked third?
Yes.
Then do you see that it's also, the next page is a state ranking of oxycodone January to December 2013?
Yes.
Tennessee's ranked 9th.
Objection form,
See that?
foundation, scope.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
Tennessee's ranked 9th.
Yes.
And in 2013, Mallinckrodt sold
Yeah,
hydro.
you did that, okay.
Yeah, I got you.
Thank you.
In 2013, Mallinckrodt sold hydrocodone products. Fair.
Objection, foundation, I'm sorry, objection to scope.
Yes.
Okay, and then in 2013, Mallinckrodt sold oxycodone products. Fair.
Objection, scope.
Correct.
Then in 2013, Mallinckrodt sold oxymorphone products. Did it?
Objection, scope.
That's my understanding.
And Tennessee, for oxymorphone products, according to this slideshow, was the second ranked state.
Objection form, foundation, and scope.
That's what's reflected in here.
Can you look at the bottom of the page and see the source for this information?
Yes.
What is the source?
Source.
Objection form, foundation, scope.
Source, Drug Enforcement Administration, Office of Diversion Control, Pharmaceutical Investigation Section, Targeting and Analysis Unit, most current ARCOS information as of March 18th, 2014.
Is information about prescribing rates put out by the, strike that, is information about distribution rates put out by the Drug Enforcement Administration reliable?
Objection, scope.
I have no reason to doubt the DEA's ARCOS information here.
Is ARCOS information generally reliable?
Objection, scope.
It's DEA that the registrants provide to the DEA.
So it's generally reliable.
Objection, scope.
I have no reason to doubt this information in ARCOS.
Did Mallinckrodt, when considering maintaining controls for preventing diversion, did Mallinckrodt take into account whether areas had high levels of abuse of opioids?
Objection form, foundation, scope.
So the regulations didn't call for us to prevent, called for us to guard against theft and diversion.
Well, in carrying out that obligation, did Mallinckrodt tailor its efforts in states that demonstrated high levels of diversion of opioids?
Objection form, foundation.
So we're unaware of diversion. We used the heat maps to focus in on areas where the highest number of products were going to. But that didn't mean that there was diversion going on.
And did Mallinckrodt change its, did Mallinckrodt, I take it then, believe that in areas where there were high levels of prescribing of opioids, that Mallinckrodt had to look with particular care at evidence of diversion?
So,
Can I hear that
Oops.
back? Sorry.
sure. Sorry.
Question, did Mallinckrodt change in areas where there were high levels of prescribing of opioids that Mallinckrodt had to look with particular care at evidence of diversion?
Objection form, foundation.
So, as I stated, if we were aware of any diversion, we reported that. We used the heat maps to identify areas where large amounts of products were going into.
Well, and you've identified Tennessee as one of those areas where large amounts of opioid products were going into, to use your term. Fair?
According to the heat map.
So what actions did you take to reflect the heightened risk of diversion posed by those high numbers of opioid prescriptions.
Okay.
Objection, form, foundation.
So that's not how I characterize it. That's where a large number of products were going into. So we undertook a review of pharmacies in those areas and collaborated with the distributors to determine if there was anything going on.
Because you did understand if you have a high level of prescribing in an area, then you had to look more carefully at that area to evaluate whether the high level of prescribing reflected diversion.
Objection, form.
To have an understanding of what was going on in that area didn't mean that there was diversion.
I've handed you Exhibit 78. Do you see it?
Yes.
Do you see it's an email from Jennifer Buis to Debbie Digby?
Yes.
Debbie Digby is a Mallinckrodt employee.
Yes.
And Jennifer Buis says, Debbie, Don was inquiring whether it was possible to break out the 15s and 30s from one another on the attached spreadsheet. Well, I'm fairly sure you can do this. Can you run the data back 24 months? This may be the challenging part. We're only interested in 6 states if this helps. Do you see that?
I do.
And, you know, do you see that Tennessee is one of the 6 enumerated states?
Yes.
Did Mallinckrodt keep a list of providers that its own employees had identified as pill mills?
Objection.
I don't know the answer to that.
I'm going to hand you Exhibit 79. Do you see that you have in front
Hold
of
on,
you?
you've just handed him an
No
exhibit
problem.
that's more than an inch thick.
Take a moment. I just have, I think, one question about this document. I just want to know if this document reflects chargeback data for Mallinckrodt. This document's Exhibit 79.
Objection, form, foundation, scope.
So it appears to be chargeback data.
Are you familiar with the Controlled Substances Act?
I'm familiar with it.
And are you familiar with the Tennessee version of the Controlled Substances Act?
Objection beyond the scope.
I'm aware that Tennessee has regulations.
Do you know that violation of the Controlled Substances Act can subject a manufacturer of opioid drugs to criminal liability?
Objection, calls for legal inclusion. Objection beyond the scope.
Are you familiar with criminal laws in Tennessee?
Objection, overly broad. Objection beyond the scope.
Do you know that a distributor, Miami Lucan, has been charged with criminal violations of the Controlled Substances Act?
Objection, overly broad. I'm sorry, strike that. Objection, foundation. Objection, beyond the scope.
So what's the answer to the question?
I'm not aware of that.
And I asked you if you're familiar with the criminal laws in Tennessee. What's the answer to that question?
Objection, overly broad. Objection, beyond the scope.
I'm not.
And you're not aware of the Miami Lucan indictment?
Objection, lack of foundation. Objection, beyond the scope.
I'm not familiar with it.
Are you familiar with the indictment of a company called Rochester Drugs?
Objection, beyond the scope. Objection, lack of foundation.
I believe I reviewed a news article on that.
Have you reviewed the actual indictment?
Objection, beyond the scope.
I have not.
What information do you have about past criminal investigations, if any, of Mallinckrodt by federal authorities?
Okay, I'll take a minute here. So you know this witness served for a number of years as an FBI agent. I will just caution the witness. The witness will know what he can say publicly and what he can't.
I'm unaware of any.
Do you have any information about current criminal investigations of Mallinckrodt by federal law enforcement officials?
Objection, beyond the scope. And I'll instruct you not to answer to the extent you've learned of any investigations by counsel, from counsel.
I have no knowledge.
Mallinckrodt drugs go to all 50 states?
Objection, beyond the scope.
That's my understanding.
What have you heard about criminal investigations, if any, by state or local law enforcement agencies of Mallinckrodt?
I'll ask you to carve out any communications you've had with counsel.
I don't have any knowledge.
Have you had discussions with anybody within Mallinckrodt about Mallinckrodt's potential criminal liability for violation of the Controlled Substances Act?
Objection, beyond the scope. Objection to the extent it calls for a privileged communication. I'll direct you not to divulge communications with counsel.
No.
Have you had any discussion with anybody about Mallinckrodt's potential criminal liability for violating state laws relating to the manufacture, sale, or distribution of controlled substances?
Objection, that's beyond the scope. Objection, instruction not to answer to the extent you've learned anything in a conversation with counsel.
No.
Let's take a break, come back and wrap it up.
We are going off the record at 3:19 p.m. We are back on the record at 3:31 p.m.
I'm going to hand you Exhibit 79. Do you see that you've been handed a document that's entitled Consent Order?
Yes.
Okay, and you see that it's in the matter of the Food City Pharmacy, number 674, 5941 Kingston Pike, Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yes.
And do you see that there are findings of fact?
Yes.
And if you flip over to the second page of this document, do you see that one of the findings of fact is during the respondent's period of operation as a pharmacy in 2013, the respondent routinely dispensed controlled substances in a manner not consistent with applicable statutes and regulations?
Yeah.
Objection, form. Objection, scope.
Do you recall that you've looked at documents today showing in 2013 this Food City operation that's addressed in this consent order came to the attention of Mallinckrodt?
Objection, form. Objection, scope.
So I'm unfamiliar with this document. I am familiar that we reviewed some Food Cities earlier today, and that we had reviewed some Food Cities with the distributors.
And do you see that the Food City has now executed a consent order saying that back in 2013, it was in fact dispensing controlled substances in a manner not consistent with applicable statutes or regulations?
Objection, form, foundation, scope.
Okay, that's what's in this document.
Okay, so the point is, you all were looking at this Food City, but even though your Assistant General Counsel had indicated this Food City was distributing approximately or filling prescriptions for 800,000 oxycodone 30 milligram tablets in a year, you at Mallinckrodt continued to allow Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals to be filled at this Food City. Fair?
Form, foundation, scope.
So during the reviews, we didn't have any information that led us to believe that there was any diversion going on.
I mean, the only information you had that diversion was going on was that Food City you knew served the Bearden Clinic, which one of your own salespeople called a glorified pill mill, that the Food City was distributing 800,000 oxycodone 30 milligrams per year, and that the Food City was, according to Amerisource Bergen, prescribing inordinate amounts of oxycodone 30 milligram tablets. And didn't you have ample evidence that this Food City was, as later determined, violating the laws related to the filling of prescriptions for controlled substances?
I'm going to object to the form of the question and move to strike counsel's testimony.
Go ahead and answer the question.
I'm going to object that it's beyond the scope, and I'm going to object that it lacks foundation.
Answer the question.
No.
Have you reviewed in your work for Mallinckrodt this consent order until you received it at this deposition?
This is the first that I'm seeing it.
So you've never looked at a consent order by a pharmacy that had come to your attention years ago, in which the pharmacy confirms that it was violating the laws related to the distribution of controlled substances?
Objection, scope. Objection, foundation.
So me personally, no. I don't know if anybody on the SOM team has. And while we serviced the distributors who are providing products to the downstream registrant Food City, we continued to review the Food Cities.
And Food City continued to pour opioids into East Tennessee
Objection.
while you continued your review. Fair?
Objection, form, foundation, beyond the scope.
And my understanding is that the number of products going into the Food Cities went down as time went on.
We'd have to look at your chargeback data and IMS data to figure that out, right?
Not IMS data,
But chargeback data.
Chargeback
fair.
data.
Let me ask you now, would you agree that the dispensing of 800,000 pills of oxycodone 30 milligram was a suspicious practice on the part of Food City when Mallinckrodt's lawyers reported that?
Objection, form, foundation, scope.
As I've stated before, we reviewed the pharmacy and did not come up with anything that led us to believe that there was any diversion.
Counsel, we've now passed the 12-hour mark, so this concludes the deposition. Thank you.
I agree. We'll honor the time.
Actually, that's 30 seconds. You're a tiny bit premature.
Going off the record at 3:30 p.m.
You're all right.